Hi guys, I'm Terera Timora. This is my personal YouTube channel, and today I just wanna comment on the commentary that has been, blooming everywhere about the Brooklyn Beckham versus his family drama. So I find it quite interesting how both on the political right and left, there's been sort of taking sides and almost assuming that doing one thing is expressing that you're kind of on the left versus doing another thing, you're expressing that you're sort of on the right. And I think that very much reflects the idea of the personal as political, which, I mean, if you've listened to anything else that I usually say, I'm very much against. And I just find it quite interesting how this drama has sort of put this, made this so apparent, how there's an assumption that you can sort of make politics with your sort of private personal choices or just by commenting on other people's. And I feel like throughout this, that's been discussed as a case of either, misogyny or sort of ungratefulness to the elders. What's being ignored is a wholly different sphere of what politics are today, which is the sort of trauma culture that we are sort of permeated by on, just social life in general, not just within the left, but certainly within leftist spaces as well. And I don't know, I guess I just wanna redirect you guys to that arena of thought and analysis. So first of all, what happened? I mean, at this point, anyone who's barely on the internet or knows anything about celebrities knows. But just for the two men watching who haven't heard of this, basically David Beckham, the football player, and Victoria Beckham's, the Spice Girl eldest son, Brooklyn, just came out on Instagram sort of responding to the rumors that have been going on for years, I think, at this point, about his and his family's feud, if you will, sort of estrangement from the rest of his family, his parents, his siblings, etc. Of which his newish wife, Nicola Peltz, has been sort of blamed for. And so that's what happened. So first of all, something that's been said and that I will sort of agree with is how much this resembles the Prince Harry Meghan Markle situation. And I don't understand why some leftists online are kind of saying that's not true when that's, I mean, it seems like the same script, and wait for it because I will later get to why that kind of matters a bit if we're to analyze this sort of scenario in the public eye. And basically they have the same script because this sort of, speaking out through Instagram stories that Brooklyn has done literally lays out the same sort of bullet points that the other couple has been sort of, using as their defense for years. So this idea that him and his wife just want privacy and a quiet life, this idea that for his family, sort of brand, and here it's brand instead of firm, but isn't that literally basically the same concept? His family basically cares more about the brand than about family love. And yeah, again, like on the left, that's been seen as, yeah, definitely a reason to like cut someone off, and you know how that's kind of the decline of capitalism, that we all, that even rich people are like not doing well emotionally. And on the right, that's been seen as, again, like ungratefulness, destroying the family, etc. Another point that has been brought up is sort of this idea that this is like a misogynistic campaign against Nicola, much like the campaign against women like Meghan Markle, Blake Lively. And here, I will say, like, I see that point, and I will agree that there are misogynistic aspects to how these women have been treated. I will also say they don't seem... It's not that they're not great, because a victim doesn't need to be great. I actually am very much against that whole mindset. It's just that they seem to also be at fault. There's a complexity there, so it just feels unrealistic to sort of purport that it's them only being victims, and that there's no nuance in the stories. And I will say, though, that for white women specifically, there seems to be like a leeway to just like laugh at us, or like be to the point where it's misogynistic, because I mean it's just white women, right? And I honestly, in that sense, and this goes on in general, cut the crap. Like, that really fucking annoys me. But anyway, just to get on with this topic. So those were like really big points being made. And this is obviously being connected to this whole idea of family estrangement, right? Like parental estrangement from adult children. And I mean, I am one of those children. I am estranged from my mother, and I mean, I think of myself as the woman who raised me. And so I will say I completely understand where someone like Brooklyn might be coming from, and honestly, literally any estranged child, and I will repeat the points that are very much being made of that is not an easy decision that you just take on a random morning just out of literally nowhere. Absolutely not. Like, that is something extremely painful. It's not that you love the situation, it's that it's the only thing that feels viable at a given point. And so that's true. The thing is, I've also seen comments on this topic, and that's not the only thing, by the way, but this is one of the reactions that I've been reading, is this idea that the solution to toxic families is no family. And I just find that incredibly sad, because to people like myself, or I mean, apparently like Brooklyn, who like are really unhappy with their sort of nuclear family of origin, if the solution you're giving us is, well, you might as well not have one ever, to me, that's a cope. It's a cope, because like, really, when people, and I quoted this article, this Dustin Guastella Damage Magazine article in my video, that I will link here below, about sort of actually not abolishing the family, like that is a bad idea. But basically what he was saying is, historically, when people have been materially able to have families, they have had families. Like, this is a reason for happiness. It is an act of hope towards the future. It is an acknowledgement that we make sense in the world, that we are important in the world, and that our society revolves around humans, something which might sound obvious, but it's not so obvious anymore, unfortunately. And so I just find that incredibly sad, not to say politically a very, very poor choice, counterproductive to say the least. And yeah, basically a cope, because families are something we would want. It's just the current organization of the economy and how it's developing and how, how that's impacting our private lives is stopping us from creating those families. It's stopping us from being in relationships, let alone have babies, right? So yeah, that's a response that I'm very critical of. Just as the idea that, capitalism has gotten to such a low point that even rich people are sad. So is the problem, is mental health the problem? Because that sounds like that's what people who have this sort of argument are saying to me. When actually, I think it's not so much a matter of are we sad, are we not sad? We need to not be under capitalism because capitalism produces mental illness. I think it's more like, no, actually just looking for happiness and focusing so much on our mental health is a problem, period. We are never gonna be fully happy, whether that's under capitalism or under a different system. It's just like, where can life be more free? Where can life be more meaningful? Where can life progress, right? And sort of where can humanity progress towards a better future for ourselves, for all of us. And to me, in connection to that, the problem with this sort of situation, for instance, in the case of Brooklyn and the Beckhams, is this self-branding. And this is what I love to tell Brooklyn, is like, man, your family has just done that with greater success than the rest of us, but it's not like the rest of us don't go through self-branding. We just do that, but also fear for our housing, for our job, for our grocery shopping. It's the self-branding is so present and pressing in the lives, for instance, of the professional managerial class, like I described in my latest video, which I'll also link. Like, it's this exercise where parenting becomes about self-branding, like the branding of the child, where when you are creating your life, you're creating your own brand. And this is sort of the pact that you have to make to have like possibly a little bit of a better job in many instances, to sort of enter that professional managerial class or stay in it, to have a professional job that has greater benefits economically and societally, rather than a blue collar job or a lower white collar job, right? And so to me, it's not so much about the mental health, it's a lot about people becoming brands, and obviously families becoming brands. I'm sure Prince Harry feels the same about his family, sort of branding him as this character in a play almost, rather than, someone with their own humanity. And so I think that's definitely a problem. And I will say another point that I haven't seen being made a lot, but I've seen some people touch on it. I think Jordan Teresa actually had interesting points to make about this, and even made like a video essay about it. I will link that for you guys to check out her channel. It's this idea that you're supposed to want this grand brand, right? And like, isn't that what we should all aspire to? This is also what I talked about within the professional managerial class in my latest video, where I was saying like, sure, I've been given, you know, definitely more opportunities than most, but did I want them? You know what I mean? Like, is this idea that because your focus should be on this sort of corporate ladder and climbing it, then, I mean, for people like Brooklyn, they're born at the top of it. I mean, it's like, what else do you even want? Like, and this is what I hear a lot of right-wingers say now about Brooklyn. It's like, bro, what else do you want? Like, you were born at the top of this. And my point is, what if this whole thing just sucks? Like, a lot of us are not really into it. Maybe we want other things that are definitely, or like we would prioritize other things that are out of fashion at the moment. I think I wrote an article 3 years ago about this Selena Gomez documentary, My Mind and Me. And I was listening to this Swiftologist podcast the other day, where they were sort of describing how it seems like Selena didn't really love having such a music career. Like, it was almost like she was handed this brand for herself, but it just, like, her attitude and like the way she reacts just makes you wonder, like, does this girl want this badly? Like, it seems like she really maybe would have been like more fulfilled by getting married younger and like having babies and having a little bit of a more chill life. And I wonder, like, is that the craft, or is that the fact that she has to become this like product despite apparently her own vocal capabilities or lack thereof, right? Like, it's sad, because and I actually very much relate, because it like, and I've had this question of like, well, you could have done this and that and have this opportunity, like, aren't you like, so why weren't you more excited? And it's like, because I personally didn't want it, even if it looked better on a grid. Like, why do you need to live for an Insta feed? You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of that self-branding. And again, I also think this might be the case for Prince Harry. But yeah, basically, those are like the range of points that I wanted to touch on. But the biggest one that I feel like no one is really addressing here, and yet again, fellow leftists disappointed me, it's trauma culture, right? And it does link to this idea of, thinking about everything in terms of mental health, and why are we so unhappy? Well, actually, I am very much looking forward to reading the new book by Catherine Liu. I think it's titled Traumatized, and I haven't read it yet, but I have listened to the many sort of interviews that she's given discussing this topic. And what she discusses is how this trauma culture that permeates Western society, especially since after World War II, has basically individualized and decontextualized suffering, very much separating it from alienation and sort of the impact of labor itself and of material conditions on workers, on the spirits of workers and the working class, has been sort of replaced by, you know, main characters in this scenario, such as precisely someone like Prince Harry, or right now someone like Brooklyn Beckham, people who wanna do precisely this exercise in branding, a lot of time within politics, again going back to this idea that the personal becomes political. Liu makes this example of AOC, you know, where she basically was talking about the assault on the Capitol and how it triggered her because it reminded her of, you know, being sexually assaulted. And, you know, it becomes evidently a branding exercise where you're not really doing what's best even for you psychologically, which shouldn't even be the point if what you want to do is politics, to be honest. But you're not even doing that, you're doing what sells. And you know, Amber Ailey Frost also discusses this in her Baffler article that I will also link below. All of this I will link below. And you know, she talks about this sort of confessional mode of publishing some sort of essay survivors testimonies, where they basically, you know, tell their story and their trauma in this very sort of raw first-person narrative, and how it basically leaves you like, okay, so what now? You know, what's the point of this ultimately if not selling and self-branding for these women who maybe, you know, want to get in the writing industry, which is really hard to get into. And of course, the, you know, operators around this industry are exactly people like Oprah Winfrey, who, by the way, just did this like long episode on estranged children, right, where she tried to sort of cover both sides. She had like mental health professionals on, she had estranged families on, and she's also the person who interviewed, for instance, Prince Harry, right? And so you can see everything coming together, you know, this idea of the personal is political, this idea of self-branding, just under this umbrella of, you know, basically trauma culture, right? Also mental health, right? This obsession with mental health. And I don't know, I find it surprising that trauma culture hasn't been sort of brought up as this is what this is a part of. And you know, I think it becomes so obvious if you are able to place Prince Harry within that, and to then see how, you know, this reminds me more of the beginning of Prince Harry and how he started like basically denouncing his family to like the public. But then, yeah, he went on to talk more about mental health, And you know how, yeah, like emotional intelligence is important, and these children on social media and their mental health, and you know, just this, again, focus on this individualized, decontextualized mental health culture, like culture about mental health and trauma, and you know, a lot of victim testimony being sort of pretending like it's politics, pretending like telling that personal traumatic story is doing politics. And that, to me, is what is incredibly alarming, to make people think that by telling their story they are already doing politics. Because to me, it should be about the politics makes your personal life, like you are entirely permeated by the political era that you are inhabiting. A lot of your problems have to do with that political scenario rather than your unique psychology, your personal decisions, or your like authentic self. And so yeah, to me, telling someone that telling their story, their trauma equals being an activist is the opposite of telling someone, look, actually it's the other way around. It's like, if you want to understand what's going on for you, maybe you should understand the context you're in, and you will not change that context in a solid way, in a solid, profound way that is good for you as someone in the majority, as a worker. You will not affect that by living your private life differently, and thinking that you are doing politics through that. Which also makes people very uncomfortable sometimes, because it brings such self-scrutiny and such weight on, you know, personal preferences that are totally okay to be there and won't have this huge impact on the world as they're sort of portrayed to maybe have. And I will say, in terms of family estrangement, let's be really careful to not make it into a situation such as, you know, people like Cristina Fallarás, for instance, defending Spain, such as, oh, if your family is against immigration, you should cut them off, or else you're a fascist. No, please don't do that. Like, family estrangement should never be about, I am doing my politics through cutting off this racist person. No, it should be about, you're sick of someone, you cannot fucking stand it anymore, you hold a grudge, you cannot get over it. You know what, maybe you should just cut someone off, because you're actively poisoning yourself by being near this person, and you're done. Whether that's the most ethical thing to do or not, you're just done. Cut them off, then go ahead. But I think, and again, I'm telling you with first-hand experience, the reason shouldn't be I'm doing this moral action. It should be I'm just done. Because again, we are rationalizing, I've said this, I'm such a broken record, but we are rationalizing the most intimate emotional parts of our lives, and we are emotionalizing and, you know, going from a place of feelings, the parts of our lives that should be the most rational, such as our political activity, such as our civil life. It should be the opposite way around. Personal life, allow yourself to be human. Political life, rationally, what is to be done? It's literally the opposite now. And to this point, I wanna end on this Catherine Liu quote that she wrote in Damage magazine. I'm gonna link her article down below because she talks about sort of infantilism and how, you know, we're treating young people at the moment, like the younger generations. And she basically writes, to honor the student or child within would require telling her to overcome the need for immediate recognition in order to do the hard work of struggling against the powers arrayed against us in the name of collective and material good. The confusion of emotional expressivity with political participation on the side of the liberals and liberal-leaning leftists has produced a culture of conformity. Reestablishing boundaries between the personal and the political is the first step in building strong political egos, capable of the difficult task of reinventing politics and friendship on the basis of solidarity, critique, and respect rather than vibing, forced consensus, and fear. And I think that's absolutely key. You know, there needs to be this separation, and there needs to be this, you know, not just vomiting of everything we are feeling on social media, acting like it is for a noble political end, while actually it's still self-branding and it's there for sale, you know? Brooklyn, you are self-branding yourself yet again. That's what you're doing by releasing this. And I, again, firsthand get it, but also think about what you do now and think about what the point of this is, because, like, let me tell you, as a spectator, this is gossip and I will eat it up. Absolutely. Actually, you know what? Thank you for this. But also, it's not serious. Like, it's very difficult for this to be sort of a noble pursuit. It's very much gossip. It's very much gossip. So yeah, this is where I stand with all of this. I hope I directed you guys to a sort of different area of analysis where I would place this, not just this drama, but the reactions to it and the sort of world that it exists within. Let me know what you guys think. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, actually. I found it very entertaining to go through people's opinions on this topic. So yeah, politically speaking, not a big fan of this sort of narrative. On a gossip level, great, loving it. Anyway, thanks you guys for listening to me. I will be back here very soon.